2, 3, 4.
Rev up your engine!
Two-Rod says, I'm looking at Mustangs, used. What do you think about a 6-cylinder versus a 4-cylinder turbo? Definitely go 6-cylinder, especially used. The 4-cylinder turbos are fast, they're great, but they have problems as they age. I got a customer that has one, he's getting rid of it now because it's starting to fall apart with 100,000 miles and needs to put a bunch of money. The 6-cylinders are stronger engines, it's going to last long. Yeah, they don't put out as much horsepower, but they're fun enough to drive. I mean, if you want a fast Mustang, get a normally aspirated V8. You're going to pay more for a V8. If you don't mind the lower speed of a 6-cylinder one, go ahead and get it. It's going to outlast a 4-turbo by a long shot. Plus, you're buying used. Buying a used turbocharged car, always a mistake. Most guys buy them to go fast. They wear out quicker. Punishment 456. Will Toyota Lexus V8s rise in value now that they're going to stop making them in a couple of years? Well, not really. Maybe an oddball one. You know, the racing ones, the fast, zippy ones, they may because they don't sell as many of them. But any normal one, like, you know, a Lexus 400, 420, 450, whatever, they're still mass-produced cars. They're not going to really rise in value. They're not like they make 100 or something. Yeah, it can rise in value. But when they make tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of cars, they're never ever worth that much money, especially the ones that people make in an attempt to say, well, this is going to be a collector's item. It's just like those people that collect those stupid toy cars, right? And they buy the NASCAR special and they keep it in the box and they don't play with it. And then you find out that they made 150,000 of them, and even 20 years later, maybe you paid $100 and they're worth 110 or something. You're not going to make any money on it. So no, I don't think they're ever going to be worth value, other than the fancy ones, the $100,000 plus ones with the V8s. If they stop making them, those could at some point be sort of collector's items because they don't make as many, they don't sell as many, and if they're the last V8s, hey, they could be, but I mean, it's still kind of a stretch with a mass-produced car. First Sniper says, Scotty, do I need a memory saver in my 16 Ram Hemi before I disconnect my battery or hook up a small 12-volt charger to the terminals? Okay, just get the battery saver. You do not want to disconnect them and have a battery charger. It could surge and destroy your computers. You can get one of those battery savers things. The one I bought on Amazon, I believe, was $12 or something. And you can just hook it up to any 12-volt supply. You don't want transformers involved in it with a battery charger. You just want an actual battery going in and plug it in. They don't cost hardly anything. They're very handy, and they're also very safe because they're polarity. You plug them in, and the one end is black and the one end is red, so you can't reverse them unless you're an idiot. Get one. They don't cost much. The Vicatha 12 says, looking at a project and daily driver car. Acura RL 2007, needs some body work. Offered 1,400 with 200,000 kilometers, mainly highway mileage. I need a car with a bigger battery because I'll be living north. Is this a good buy? Should I look elsewhere? I'm going to use it as a daily driver. Okay, well, first of all, you're talking about two different things. A project car and a daily driver car are generally two different things. Project car is something you're going to work on for a while. Daily driver is a daily driver. Now, it is an Acura, and it's 13 years old. If you can get an Acura for $1,400, it's probably going to have some things wrong with it, because generally they go for a lot more than that. But if you're doing that, what you want to do is take it to a guy like me, a mechanic, and have it checked out before you even put any money down on it. Because I had a guy buy one of those the other day. Turns out that the engine head gasket was blown. Isn't worth fixing. It could cost thousands and thousands. I had another one about 6 months ago. He made the mistake of buying it, then bring it here. I said, the transmission's going out. That's going to be at least $4,000. He paid $1,500 for the car. It was $1,500 pissed down a toilet. So, you want it checked out first. Now, if a mechanic says it's an okay vehicle, go right ahead. But do realize it's an Acura. Acuras have expensive parts. They're fancy Hondas, and they're decent cars. But as they age, they get expensive. If I were you, I'd look more for something like a Toyota Camry or something that they last longer and they're cheaper to fix. Roy H74 says, Scotty, I have a question regarding trouble code P1604 on a Toyota RAV4 with 40,000 miles. The engine doesn't start right away. Cranks for about 10 seconds. What's your best guess? Okay, that is a kind of crazy code that you can get even from operator error. I see that a lot when a customer brought me a Camry the other day. She was buying used that was 4 years old, had that code in it. Well, it had sat for a while. The battery had been swapped out at the used car lot and stuff. The car was good, and that was the only code it had. Yours is 2014. My advice, just replace the battery. Go to AutoZone or someplace, buy a good battery, replace it, reset the codes, drive it, and see what happens. A lot of times, the reason it's cranking longer is because the battery's starting to wear out, and it will trip that stupid code. It could be just as simple as time for a new battery. Because cars today are so high-tech, computerized, if your battery gets below a certain voltage frame, it will start having problems starting. It'll trip that stupid code. I see it all the time, not just on Toyotas. Toyota software is a little more sensitive, so they'll trip it faster than, say, a Chrysler or a GM. But any car that if the battery's going low, it can trip that code. So I'd start with just put a new battery in. It might fix the whole thing. ARS 1298 says, Scotty, my 97 Pathfinder, I have an issue when my vehicle will shudder when I press it on the highway. Not bad. I replaced the rotors 2 years ago. I don't have any vibration in the steering wheel, but you feel a slight shudder throughout the car. First thing I tell you to do, that thing is a 97. It's old as the hills. Either take your brake drums off and have them resurfaced, the drums resurfaced on a lathe, or just buy new drums. That thing's so old and there's aftermarket ones cheap enough to buy new drums for the back. If your front rotors are warped and you hit the brakes hard, the steering wheel will shake. But if it's the back ones, the whole vehicle will shudder because it's no longer even, so they're pulsating, but the steering wheel won't shake because it's the back brakes, not the front brakes. You want to pray at something that simple, because I've worked on some of those Pathfinders, and when they do that, it's often the entire suspension system falling apart. I had one where part of the frame in the back started to crack, and the springs were starting to break, and that's why it was shuddering. It can get very expensive when they get old on those things. But pray it's just the drum. Buy a set of aftermarket ones, put them on, and pray that fixes the problem. Benny Boy 10 says, I put Freon on my '07 Nissan Maxima. I said full on the gauge, but it's not blowing cold. Help. All right, there's a lot of reasons air conditioning systems don't work besides being low on refrigerant. Those little gauge things, they're handy sometimes with the add-on with one little gauge and tells you if it's full or not. But to get the true story of any air conditioning system, you have to have both pressures. You have to have the low side pressure, which is what you're measuring when you add it in with a can with a gauge. But you also have to have the high side to see if it's working. So get a set of gauges or go to a place like AutoZone that rents them free and hook them up and see what the low pressure and the high pressure is at idle and about 2,000 RPM. And generally, if it's 80, 90, something like that, you should have 30-something PSI on the low side and maybe 180, 190 or something on the high side. Now, if you do have that, then that means the system's working mechanically. But if it's not blowing cold, then you got some kind of electronic problem. It could be that the blend doors inside the dash aren't opening. Now for that stuff, you need to deal with a scan tool like I have to check to see if the things are opening and closing. But if you do have normal pressures, then you got something else wrong. Let's say it's full on the low side, the pressure, and then you check the high side, and the high side's the same pressure. That means that generally your compressor's shot and that it's not pumping, because you can have the correct pressure on the low side, but if the high side's the same pressure, nothing's happening. It just sits there. And when a compressor breaks, that's what happens. So start with that. Hook up both gauges. Now, here's an interesting hydrogen vehicle story. Carmel, Indiana is now setting up a hydrogen on tap device to put into their trucks to make them more fuel efficient. They're going to put them in snowplows and stuff. What it is there's a 45-kilogram box in the bed of the truck. And when he pushes a button, the driver of the truck, that box begins to create hydrogen gas. It's kind of like a giant fizzy. Now, this isn't a hydrogen fuel cell vehicle. Each one of those boxes has 6 stainless steel canisters. And each one has a 113-gram button that's made of aluminum and gallium alloy. And as water drips on it, it creates hydrogen gas. So it's actually generating the gas. You don't have to go have the compressed hydrogen that's dangerous lying around. It actually creates it when the button's pushed and water starts dripping on it. The water creates a chemical reaction and hydrogen gas comes out. Then the hydrogen's released and the rest creates a waste product that they can recycle to make more buttons and keep the process going. Aluminum Gallium Company has been working on this stuff for 14 years to refine it, and now it seems to work. Hydrogen burns without emissions, and when the hydrogen stuff does run out, it just runs on the regular fuel supply. So you're not stranded like you would be with an electric car with no electricity. And it's only going to cost them $5,000 for the retrofit. So this is a simple thing. You don't have to put all this fancy electric motors or hydrogen fuel cells. It's just burning the hydrogen that's created. And of course, you don't need a hydrogen fuel supply like you would with a hydrogen fuel cell where you got to get the hydrogen to mix it. This actually creates the hydrogen itself. And since it's just creating a gas and you burn it, It isn't this high-pressure hydrogen that's dangerous. It doesn't create enough to really cause a problem. Pretty interesting for this Galco company. So if you never want to miss another one of my new car repair videos, remember to ring that bell.